Hey friends, it's Dandelion here. Hope you're all well. I'm currently in my friend's backyard, and they have a little plot of land that is pretty much neglected. There's plans to turn it into a farm of sorts and grow some veggies, but it's really interesting to look around and see how much food is already here. And so I'm just going to break down some of the Southern California plants that I see in a sort of urban area. I'm in downtown Los Angeles, and there's plants everywhere. So even in the cracks of this area, which is really funny, it says do not enter. No, it says keep out. And there's so much of that in our society, and I actually sort of got this experience of people saying on my foraging upcoming class, people were saying, hey, don't harvest white sage, and they were saying, careful, someone said don't forage. And I know Pascal Baudard is a forager, and he also got a really interesting post and a lot of good comments on there, all about sort of, can we find an ethical map to foraging, or are we all supposed to not forage? And I want to remind you all that at my classes, I spend a lot of time talking about the ethics and talking about the indigenous traditions and talking about how we can actually work on restoring ecology instead of just being exploiters. So I'm not out here ripping up plants and then shoving them in people's bags and saying, go make money off of this. It's very different when we start to consider, I was really inspired by Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and just the idea of ethical caretaking with the ecosystem that we have left. So if you can see, I'm pretty much in a completely urban area. There's houses and all kinds of stuff, and the main street is right the next street over. And yeah,
Beta would take the kids to McDonald's. He's not going to have some lecture about it's not healthy.
Started operating. Did y'all hear that? That was tweaked out. So within all these wonderful plants, there's one plant here which is actually in a really good time for harvesting and eating the greens. Ethical caretaking. So this is another example of it here, and this is already gone to flower. So this is the aster family. One of the ways you can tell is they all look like dandelion. They have the white fluff that's in there, right? And that will be brought by the wind. And so this is known as a weed. It was introduced here from somewhere else, and now nobody knows what to do with it, and most people spray it with chemicals. And there's this question of, was it indigenous to this land? No, it wasn't. So therefore, do we have free range to forage it? And what are the ways to forage this where you're not just ripping it out of the ground or spraying it with chemicals? There's somewhere in between. So at this stage, it's too late to eat. This is going to be very bitter, but the bitterness, of course, is medicinal. Just checking. The bitterness is still medicinal there. And so we have this white milky sap in this plant. And that's not always a sign of being poisonous. It's also a sign of having alkaloids or being medicinal. And you can see how this plant here has these little tongues that go beyond the stem. So of course it's blurry. And one of the ways of identifying it is you can see that the leaves go beyond the stem with these little leaf areas beyond it. And so then if you see this one, this is a better time for eating. So this Sow Thistle is young and it hasn't gone to flower, and when plants go to flower, it causes a larger bitter issue. So this kind of leaf right here is totally fine for salads or sauteing or anything like that. And it's pretty bitter. But bitter greens are what we're striving for in the grocery store. And of course, bitter greens help to alkalinize the blood. They detoxify the liver. They are helpful against inflammation. They help with digestive regulation. So the bitter principle is a very good thing. And those are really mild. Now the other issue is, like, this is paint, and that paint, when it rains, it leaches onto this area, and then we're in another paint area. So this wouldn't necessarily be the place I would want to forage a lot of my food. You could grow raised beds and things, but if you were in a situation where grocery stores were not available, that would be helpful to eat anyway. There's something also to be said about how I just took a nibble of that leaf, and I will continue to take detoxifying herbs, but it also has genetic information. It also has allergy information. It also has immunity information for my immune system. So right along the driveway, there's all these little plants along here, and they're also food and medicine too. And chickweed is a really great herb, right? So the white flower, Stellaria media, is the Latin name. It has a round stem. Scarlet pimpernel has a square stem and a red flower. Scarlet pimpernel is said to be not edible, but chickweed is supremely wonderful edible, right? So it has opposite leaves, as you can see, and the stems are fuzzy, but it'll be very hard to see that. You'll have a little bit of hair on an alternating side every time the leaves, and then you have alternating hair, and that's how it creepers. It's a creeper, so it grows along the edges of other plants. And this one, of course, is high in silica, really high in minerals, helpful for joints, ligaments, tendons, helpful for hair and nail growth, helpful against cysts, has been seen to shrink cysts, is really a profound medicinal, and can also be applied topically for any sort of inflammation of the body, including rashes, anything like that. So it's a really great, powerful heal-all. Makes a wonderful salad green. I eat like these all the time in salads. And of course, this is not the best place to forage. And there's also everything that's ever been done here, including spraying Roundup ever, is in the soil. So it may be toxic, but don't think that what you're getting in the grocery store is coming from heaven. It also has its issues. So here's another look at Sow Thistle, right? So maybe you can see, as I was mentioning before, the leaves go beyond the stem there. So you see that little sort of tag or something. Shift align. Chickweed is a superhero. It's not only for the chickens, it's also for the people. There's a good shot at chickweed. So I'm so glad you're learning. Shift align. And so as I mentioned, when it's in flower, right, or to seed, as this almost is, the leaves are going to be much more bitter, right, than if you get them before they flower, such as this. Let's see what that is. It's a little bit of flowered buds, so it'll be a little more bitter, but those are some edible Sow Thistle greens, and they're pretty good. And of course, you can see more chickweed. Here's another one that you might think is dandelion or Sow Thistle or something like that, but it's actually another one. This is a Lacktouka, right? Wild lettuce. This is the precursor to all the commercial lettuces. And if I had a way to show you, there's all these spines on what's called the midrib. So this is the underside of the leaf, and you can see, let's see if we can get you to see. There, I think you could see them, at least down below, which is up for you. And so the midrib is very helpful for some aster plants, including Lacktoukas, including thistles, including dandelion, chickweed, chicory, and it all is based on the midrib, the central vein on the underside of the leaf. And triangular midrib is thistles and Lacktoukas, and then Lacktoukas all have the spines on the base. And these are, of course, also called opium poppy, and they don't contain opium, but they're known to be slightly sedative and helpful for inflammation and pain. It's also a bitter plant, so it is an edible green if you need to. You just have to remove the spines on the midrib, because even if you cook them, it wouldn't those wouldn't go away. So Lacktoukas are very common in people's driveways as well. Here's another plant, Asiatic dayflower. So these young tips are edible. This is in the Polygonaceae, which you can see the sheaths, right? Polygona means many elbows, like bamboo or Japanese knotweed or smartweeds of any kind. They're all in the Polygonaceae family. And so you can see these sheaths, and the flowers of these, there's one, is edible. And this is another so-called invasive weed that we brought here for erosion control and to sell pesticides over. So we brought these here for erosion control, And then we decided that we need to sell pesticides and spray them. And this is an edible flower, as well as the young shoots are also edible. And it's pretty common in all the Northeast. Here's a look at Sow Thistle in flower. See, it looks like a dandelion flower because it's the same family. It's not the same species. And so this is the Asteraceae, or the aster family. And these are all what are called radially symmetrical flowers, right? So if you draw a cross up and down and then left and right, notice it would be the same on all sides. So that's radially symmetrical. Yeah, they're beautiful flowers. You can, of course, add those flower petals to your salad, or you can actually infuse them in a honey if you dry them, and those could actually help you against allergies because they have pollen, local pollen, and that's information for your immune system to grow. So lots of chickweed. And then this is another one they call an invader, and lantana is the common name. It grows all over the country, including Florida. I know it's common, and they planted it and now it gets around. And I think it has some action with the respiratory system and infections of the respiratory system, but I'll have to remember. I'll have to research more on that, but it's a funny one. Of course, roses are astringent and medicinal, so helpful in bathing, helpful in yoni steams, helpful in tea blends with arterial issues or veins or anything like that. You can make hydrosol from rose flowers, rose petals in your local area. And there's a hard way to do it and a very easy way to do it. Flip that around. So if you take a big pot and you take a concave bowl and you put a jar in the center of the pot and you put water around that, and then you put the herbs around that in the water, you make like a moat, and then you put that concave bowl on top of the pot and you fill that with ice, and then you simmer it. And what happens is you create condensation and evaporation. You create a cycle. That's in alchemy. That's what a pelican is for, right? It circulates. And so when you're simmering it, what happens is the molecules of the hydrosols will rise and the essential oils, and then they'll hit that concave bowl and they'll drip down into the center where the cup is. And if you do that for 45 minutes, you can get a little hydrosol, and it's not as superior as using a still, but it can get you some really good scented things, and you don't need as much plant matter because, of course, essential oils, in the international that's good. In the international world, my life has changed. It smells really good. Don't forget to sniff flowers. In the international market, of course, it takes thousands and thousands of rose petals to make hydrosol essential oils, and it's very expensive. And then, of course, I'm seeing fillery. It's edible, but somewhat forgettable, as Frank Cook used to say. And this is the seeds right now, and those are the leaves. And it's in the geranium family. And I'm not finding any that's not to seed already. The young leaves are edible, and also the flowers are edible. And then the roots are also able to be dug up, and they're quite small mostly. This plant can get big. It varies in size. Those seed pods are super cool. Look at that thing. So that's the geranium family. They don't have any scented leaves, but the leaves are also kind of fuzzy, so it's not the best for eating, unless maybe you make a pesto or something. And there's mallow. Mallow is one of the greatest greens around. It's better than any sauté green I have ever eaten, and it's mucilaginous, helpful for inflammation, the digestive tract, therefore the skin. Can be made as a poultice for skin inflammation or hives or rashes, and is a weed growing all over the place, all over the concrete. They're taking over. Oh my God, build a wall. Build a wall. They have to stay. Please don't do that. Don't do that stuff. Nature doesn't like it. So have fun. Gotta go.